reminder, the webinar is going to be recorded. So if there's anything that comes up that you'd like to go back to later, you're more than welcome to access the recording at any point. And great, see some people from Ohio, Detroit, Michigan, Saskatoon, I know North Carolina, we have some representation. Great to see everyone. And so this is the Let's Move In Libraries webinar, and it's going to be very action-packed, very, very fast-moving. And so I'm going to be trying to cover quite a bit in a short amount of time to make sure that we have lots of time for discussion and question and answer. And thank you everyone for being here. So just a quick roadmap for today's webinar. I'm going to start by briefly discussing why movement, being physically active, is something that public libraries foster, just very briefly. I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir for all of you. And then discuss some of the ideas on programs that you may wish to offer that I've learned from my research and from the results of the survey. And then after that, go into the actual results from the survey. What are some of the trends that I'm seeing in terms of public libraries and movement-based programs? And then we're going to make sure to have a lot of time at the end for a discussion of next steps, time for you all to ask questions, and let's go ahead and jump right into it. So I'm just going to start by really quickly introducing me. I am an assistant professor at the University of North Carolina here in Greensboro, North Carolina. I grew up in Illinois, and this is a picture of some of the people that I did my dissertation research on. And so I have a big interest in public library services and programs, especially for older adults, but love to be active and be outdoors, and love seeing everything that libraries are doing to encourage people to do that. And so my question for you, just so just think of this as I'm going through all this content. How can I help you start, run, and sustain movement-based programs in your libraries? This is what I'm really all about, and what I want to address. So so really think about this. How can I help you? How can I use the information that I've collected in a way that's going to be practical for you to make changes in your libraries that are going to be beneficial for your library and for your community? And I want to start just by briefly making a quick announcement. I'm not sure if Jen is here, but I wanted to acknowledge that Jen Carson, a public library director in Canada, has and the creator of the Yoga and the Library website and blogger for the programming librarian, has done a lot of work on movement-based programs in public libraries, and a lot of what I've learned has come from her. Okay, so just really quickly, why is this something that libraries are doing more of? And so part of it has to do with kind of trends in neuroscience. Research is taking place today. So just Eric Jensen, kind of an educational theorist, has this great quote where he says that for decades, the educational and scientific communities seem to believe that thinking was thinking and movement was movement, and each was as separate as could be. And today we know better. So if you think of kind of the conventional divisions of labor in terms of education, you have kind of classroom instruction, and then you have physical education, and it's very separate and demarcated. But we now know that that's really not the best way to think about learning. So this is just from just catching up on the chat. That's Jen Carson. I'll be coming back to that a little bit briefly, but and I apologize if I miss questions in the chat. I'll try to come back to them later. But this is just an image of kind of how the body lights up, and how emotions are kind of felt throughout the body. And as we know, as we learn more about neuroscience and the mind-body connection, we learn more about how cognition and movement in the body are really interconnected. And that's really been instrumental, especially in kind of creating models for movement-based programs, especially for early literacy for young children. But just another reason why this types of program yes, and Deb, I'll be happy to share a PDF of these slides as well. So I'll make the slides available after the webinar. But another reason why these types of programs are becoming more common is that, as many of you know, here in the U.S., we really struggle as a population with a lot of health-related challenges. And so in the U.S. today, less than half of all adults and only 3 in 10 high school students get the recommended daily amounts of physical activity. And this is really important because regular physical activity contributes to so many different things. It helps people control their weight. It reduces the risks of various diseases, diabetes, as well as just generally strengthening the body and contributing to mental health. And so one of the ways that the federal government has addressed this under the Obama administration, First Lady Michelle Obama developed a Let's Move initiative. And one part of that involved working with museums and gardens to kind of foster movement-based programs in museums and gardens. And that really is the inspiration for this project, focused on movement-based programs in public libraries. And another, just quickly before I start getting into the programs, is that another key thing to keep in mind is this development of models of physical literacy. And so as policymakers have grappled with how to best encourage physical activity, one model that's really come to the fore is this concept of physical literacy. And so the Aspen Institute, they had a gathering of kind of people a few years ago thinking about this topic, and they kind of adapted a pre-existing concept of physical literacy to develop this definition that physical literacy is the ability, confidence, and desire to be physically active for life. So I think that's really what we all should be striving for as we develop movement-based programs in public libraries, is creating opportunities for people of different ages and abilities to have the ability, confidence, and desire to be physically active for life. And so that's kind of my model for how to do this or why to do this. And so now I'm gonna move away from that abstraction and talk about some of the program ideas that I've found from my research. And first, I want to thank everyone who took the time a few months ago to fill out the survey. This is a map of every single public library in North America that responded to the survey. And this is actually I was really surprised. You'll see this one library up here in northern Alaska, and that's not an error. This is the library in Barrow, Alaska, at the northern bank of northern Alaska. And this is a picture of one of their movement-based programs that they do at the library. And so it's affiliated with a tribal community there, but it was really inspiring to me to see responses from libraries all over the continent, everywhere from northern Alaska to southern Florida. And so it's really something that I think is really kind of taking off, and it's great to see more and more of this, and hopefully this webinar and resources like it will contribute to creating even more of these types of programs. Okay, and just to introduce all of you, based on the people who registered, 97% of you are public librarians. So about half of you indicated that you're more interested in youth services, and about half of you indicated that you're more interested in adult services, including services for older adults. so I'm going to try to strike a balance in this presentation to talk about ideas for both youth and adults. And this is important because this is a programming area that really cuts across departmental divisions. And some of the most successful programs that I've seen are actually intergenerational. So it's the programs that are actually involving youth and adults doing things together. Okay, so let's jump right into it. So we're going to start. So for the next about 10 or 15 minutes, I'm basically just going to be walking through some program ideas that I've learned about. And we're going to start with very young children and move through all the way to older adults. And so first for young children, the first program idea is kind of just music and movement-based story time. So you don't need to necessarily have complicated props, but there's lots of resources out there, and so that are kind of focused on different ideas that you can use to incorporate movement and music into your story times, especially for very young children, in ways that are going to capture their attention and keep them engaged, especially if they're at a very young age. And I'm just going to basically be going through some pictures kind of really quickly. And so this is kind of, there's lots of really kind of amazing, innovative things happening. So this picture on the left is actually from Colorado, and this picture on the right is from Brooklyn Public Library, and it's basically kind of a little bit crazy and chaotic, but basically just shredding a bunch of paper and putting it on the floor and letting the kids go to town. And so it's just kind of these types of fun things that are really engaging for very young children and kind of get them moving and having a good time. There's also more contemplative types of programs for very young children. Lots of libraries, of course, are now doing storytime yoga programs. So this is a picture on the left from San Diego, and on the right from Oklahoma City, yoga-based programs for very young children. And here's just another picture from Wilmington, North Carolina, of a similar type of program. And then, of course, there's all sorts of dance-based programs for very young children. The one on the left is from St. Louis, Missouri, and the one on the right is from, I believe, Wisconsin. And so kind of having these dance breaks, kind of wiggle times, opportunities for young kids to kind of move around and dance around. So preschool dance party. And so, yeah, it is a lot of joy, and these are the types of things, getting young children to associate libraries as places that are fun to be at is what really gets kids to be lifelong library users, and also to be lifelong movers, hopefully. And then, just the toddler obstacle course is another great idea. Life-sized board games. Some of you are probably familiar with some of these, but there's lots of opportunities to kind of get kids having fun and moving around in libraries. And just lastly, before I move on from from young children, one major one that is really has already taken off, but is becoming even more common, is the concept of story walk, which was developed by Anne Ferguson in Vermont, and has since kind of taken over the whole continent, and there's now story walks all over the country. But in essence, what a story walk is basically taking pages from a children's book, laminating them and posting them on a trail or on a playground. And so some are permanent story walks, some are temporary. But it's basically usually what the story walk pages will have is, obviously it'll have the page of the text, but it'll also have a suggested movement. So as kids kind of go around reading the story, they will often act out a movement to go along with the page of the story. And this can be very intergenerational. Oftentimes kids and parents will go through the story together. And yeah, just another image of a story walk. And this is something, the story walk concept is something that not only public libraries do, a lot of museums, children's museums in particular, will do story walks. And I include this image. The Boston Children's Museum sees story walk as kind of at the intersection of early literacy, family engagement, and physical activity. And I think that's really what a story walk is. And Anne Ferguson, the creator, said that she developed the story walk because she was actually working in the field of chronic disease prevention and wanted to develop a type of program that would help people be more physically active, and also get parents as active as children. So frequently story walks, as I said, are intergenerational, so they involve kind of parents and children going through the story together, walking together, doing the actions together. And it's a fun-free program that will have some substance to it. And just finally, before we move on from this, I want to just quickly make a quick plug for the idea of sensory story time. So this is a kind of a figure of a sensory story time, kind of a script, you would say. And so these are programs that are really developed in part for children that may be on the autism spectrum. And we know from research that children, not only children, but adults as well, people who are on the autism spectrum really benefit from having a lot of movement and physical activity in their story time. It makes it more engaging for them and makes it such that they're able to participate more fully into the story time. So I think elements of kind of sensory story times can be incorporated into any kind of story time to make them fun and engaging for children of diverse abilities. Okay, so there was a lot to say about programs for very young children, because that's a major place in which these types of programs exist. Now, moving on to school-aged youth, I'll be moving a little bit quicker, but when we get to school-aged youth, so these are kids in, say, first through maybe 6th or 7th, 8th grade. What a lot of libraries would do are try to incorporate various games. So this is mini golf in the library, lots of running. So this is a picture on the left from the LP Fisher Library in Canada, and on the right from Wisconsin, kind of a youth fun run. Lots of libraries now are having various youth walks or runs in the summer as a way to get school children engaged and having a good time. This is, some of you may have attended yesterday, actually, the University of Wisconsin had a webinar on Angie Play, and so this is something, just another, when we get to school-aged youth, oftentimes what libraries do are kind of create programs to get kids doing creative movements. So the concept of Angie Play is where it's a little bit, it's kind of self-determined physical activity, and not necessarily physical activity, but just getting kids to kind of be creative and to put things together. So this picture on the right is actually of a child that kind of, based on their own ideas and interests, kind of constructed this, I'm not sure what it is, but they took kind of supplies that the library provided them with and kind of put this together. And then, yeah, so there's also things that you can do with technology. Lots of libraries are using the Wii. A few years ago, Dance Dance Revolution was really popular and quite the rage. So these kind of technological ways to get school-aged youth into libraries and being physically active. And of course, things like hula hooping, other kind of games. So anything that's kind of game related is something that will often appeal to school-aged youth. And so these types of hula hooping, scavenger hunts, letterboxing, geocaching, anything that's kind of going to be fun and engaging. And yeah, these are just kind of some more resources on geocaching or letterboxing. Kind of getting children to be physically active while also engaging their intellect in various sorts of active gaming. And just one last one is gardening. Yeah, lots and lots of gardening. So now, as we know, kind of more and more libraries are having gardening initiatives, and oftentimes there'll be special programs for youth to kind of get them physically active and also educate them about kind of gardening and the earth and conservation. Okay, and I'm a little bit behind where I want to be, so I'm going to start moving a little bit faster, but just moving on to ideas for teenagers. Again, it's going to be a little bit similar to school-aged youth, where you have kind of some fun game initiatives, but you want them to be age-appropriate. So one thing that some libraries have been doing, including these movers and shakers from the Oakland Public Library, is engaging teenagers in kind of bicycling, learning about how to take care of a bicycle, maintain a bicycle, go on bike rides together. This is something that's definitely common. So things that are kind of Nerf wars are kind of more active, getting teenagers to see the library as a fun place to be and be a little bit rebellious and kind of slightly countercultural. But as we know, tweens and teenagers have a lot of energy, and so finding ways to allow teenagers to express that energy in a safe manner. And so just along those lines, some libraries now have ping pong, and actually I just heard today there's a library in Indiana that has what they call ping pong palooza every Friday. And so just having some foldable ping pong tables that you can unfold and make available for teenagers and for others to use is a great way to engage teenagers. And like for other age groups, finding ways to engage teenagers in more contemplative yoga practices is something that lots of libraries are doing with great success. So this is a picture on the left from North Carolina, and on the right from Cincinnati. So lots of ideas here. And of course, gardening again. Okay, so now that's it for youth services, and again, I'm happy to talk about any of these ideas in more length during the Q&A, but I'm just going to now jump right into program ideas for adults, and I'm going to start with actually adults in their 20s and 30s, which is kind of a population that more and more libraries are now seeking to target and engage and so a lot of the program ideas are kind of similar to the program ideas that we have for teenagers. So this is kind of a program in Sacramento, California, where they've had a lot of success engaging with adults in their 20s and 30s through kind of fun, a little bit countercultural, physical activity programs. So yeah, doing things like I think they called this zombie yoga or something like that, but just kind of very fun, creative movements, things that are going to engage people of this age group. And so this is near where I grew up, Dubuque, Iowa. Actually, once a month they have Nerf wars, but for adults. So this program is actually only open to adults aged 18 or older, and they found that this is a really great way to get young adults and in their 20s and 30s into the library and having fun. So yeah, so think about having some of the programs that you've had successfully offered for teenagers and maybe adapting them to target adults in their 20s and 30s. And really encourage you to think outside the box. So this is actually a library in Scotland that had a pole dancing class. And so really there's no limits to what you can do. And as you develop all of this, do be mindful of the fact that we live in a diverse population and people have different abilities. And so I really like this. San Diego County Library has adaptive Zumba. So they've worked with to make sure that they have special programs for people who may have developmental disabilities. So there's ways to have adaptive Zumba, adaptive yoga in a way that's going to engage adults of different abilities in your community. And again, kind of on the creative side of things, I was really amazed when I found out that Detroit Public Library actually has yoga for job seekers. So if you work in a public library, you'll often know that there's people who are coming to use the computers who are looking for jobs. And so oftentimes those people are very stressed out for obvious reasons. And so I thought this was a great idea that Detroit Public Library was actually offering every Thursday afternoon a chair yoga program for job seekers to kind of move around and de-stress and kind of, yeah, hopefully impact both their physical and mental health. Okay, so now just transitioning to adults of all ages as well as families. And so it's pretty similar. So here we're getting into kind of the yoga programs that are all the rage, Zumba. Yeah, so lots and lots of yoga, Zumba programs being offered in public libraries throughout the country. So here's Zumba programs in California and in Omaha, Nebraska. More kind of fitness aerobics classes being offered in public libraries. And definitely gardening, so lots and lots of community gardens, having raised beds on the property of the library, and allowing adults and families to use those raised beds to learn about gardening and actually have their own garden. And finally, lots of activities to get adults outdoors, so walking clubs, and not only walking clubs, a lot of libraries, I was really surprised to see lots of libraries will do special walking programs, so you can have a walking tour of historic sites or walking tour of a cemetery. These types of things are something that lots of libraries are doing. And it's not just walking. There's also some libraries that are doing things like making pedometers available to encourage walking, and also having more running-based programs. So the Rye Public Library in New Hampshire has had this running and reading group at their library for the last 5 years, and so it's a seasonal program. Every summer, the people in the group will read a book together that talks about running and then go out running, and it kind of culminates in an annual 5K. And so there's lots of libraries also actually having Couch to 5K programs to make it possible for people who are new to running to actually scale up their ability and to get ready for a 5K if they've never ran before or are new to running. And so there's lots of opportunity there. And just finally, when we're talking about adults, lots and lots of dancing programs. And so I've seen dozens of line dancing programs throughout the country, various dancing programs, ballroom dancing, Bollywood dancing, yeah, lots and lots of dancing programs. And so finally, in just this quick overview of program ideas, I'm going to share some of the ideas that I've found from programs for older adults. And so when we get to older adults, one of the most common types of programs that I've seen is Tai Chi. So Tai Chi, of course, is not only for older adults, but a lot of libraries have had great success engaging older adults through Tai Chi, or Qigong as a variant of Tai Chi. So Tai Chi, Qigong. Qigong is a little bit more easier to do. It's less intensive than Tai Chi, but these are definitely some ways to engage older adults. And there's also dance programs that you can do specifically for older adults, and chair-based exercise programs, so chair-based yoga, chair Zumba Gold, which is a version of Zumba, kind of that caters more towards older adults. And libraries that have been doing this have really found that they're really quite popular. And for the most part, again, there's always exceptions, but I'll be talking in a minute about the popularity of these types of services. And before I get into the results of the survey and some of the trends, just wanted to share with you some ideas of what you can do beyond programs. So one thing you can do is as funds are available and if you're able to partner with entities in your local area, think about refurbishing any outdoor space you may have around your library to make them more conducive to active lifestyles. So for instance, San Antonio Public Library actually put up these type of stationary fitness equipment around a number of its branches, so people can come to the library to check out books, and then as these people do, kind of do some exercises on the library lawn. There's other libraries that have invested in walk and read treadmills. So this is at Cedar Rapids Public Library. Within the library, they have 3 of these stations where you can use the treadmill for walking while reading. Some libraries are actually now even checking out bicycles. So here's a couple libraries, one in Texas and one in Pennsylvania, that actually has some bicycles available for people to check out at the library. And there's other things that people are checking out. So you can check out fishing rods and tackle boxes, check out fitness kits. There's really lots of potential here as more and more libraries invest in creating libraries of things and making sure that some of those things are things that people can use to practice active lifestyles. And one library that has really done a lot with this is Lethbridge, Alberta, which has really invested a lot of money and time in creating exercise equipment that people can check out, things like tennis rackets and other fitness kits. So quick question here, what does the fitness kit include? So it's, I mean, it really depends from place to place. A fitness kit could have things like weights in it. It could have various supplies that you would use to exercise. In some cases, it's going to have a backpack of things you could use. And actually, one place to look at if you're thinking about creating a fitness kit is Colorado. The Colorado State Park System, in collaboration with public libraries in Colorado, created this thing where you can not only check out passes to state parks in Colorado, so along with the state pass checkout, they also check out adventure backpacks filled with information and supplies that you can use for outdoor adventures. And so there's lots of different types of things that you can check out. And so quickly kind of wrapping up these program ideas, there's 2 ways to think about all of these types of movement-based programs. One is thinking about creating programs for particular populations. So it could be very young children, it could be teenagers, it could be older adults. Another way to think about it is various types of programs. So there's some programs that are developed in the context of early literacy, initiatives for very young children who are too young to read and are kind of getting ready to read. There's also a lot of these active play-based programs, so playing around but being in a physically active way through dance parties, Dance Dance Revolution, Nerf Wars, geocaching. And then there's just lots of libraries that are having straight-up fitness classes, whether it be Tai Chi, Zumba, yoga, sit and stretch, or other fitness classes at the library. The 4th type of program type is outdoor activities. So these are programs that are really focused on getting people outdoors, being in nature, and being active outside. And finally, the last type of program are seasonal programs. So if a lot of libraries may have an annual 5K or an annual hike, have community gardens, New Year, New You initiatives. So obviously, we all know that around January and February, lots of people are coming to the library to check out exercise DVDs, trying to work on those New Year's resolutions. So there's lots of potential to have seasonal programs around the holidays. Okay, so a little bit behind schedule, so I'm gonna rush through this pretty quickly, but just really briefly, I wanted to mention that one of the reasons why all this is happening is that more and more librarians are really interested in physical activity, and if librarians themselves invest more in their own physical wellness and well-being, they're going to be more likely to offer these types of programs. And in fact, I found in my research that there's a correlation between the physical health of librarians and the prevalence of this type of program. So one way to start these programs is to make sure that you and your staff are taking care of yourselves and being physically active. And then, yeah, so, and another big driver is kind of this initiative to try to rebrand public libraries, where everything doesn't necessarily have to be all about books and book literacy. So things like Nashville Public Library, which actually just won a big award, where their slogan is "Books are only half the story," and they have a big "Be Well at Nashville Public Library" initiative. And Yeah, last summer, as I'm sure all of you knew, summer 2016 was a major catalyst for a lot of this type of activity. And I wanted, before I get into the results of the survey, I just want to briefly communicate that this is definitely not only an urban phenomenon. Sometimes when I'm talking with people, they think, oh, this is just something that happens in big cities, and I can't do this because I work at a small town library and we don't have a lot of resources. And I just want to share this example, and actually I think Susan may be here, but this is Denton Public Library in rural North Carolina. So it's in a community of about 1,500 people, and not by no means a wealthy area. And nonetheless, despite having not a ton of financial resources, they've done a ton to have kind of these weekly cardio fitness class and yoga, walking groups, and so there's lots that can be done with minimal resources. And I don't think that not having the ideal space and not having a lot of money has to be a barrier to creating these types of programs. Okay, so now really quickly going into the results of the survey. And so I'm going to try to go through this quickly because it may be more or less interesting to you. But just I want to start by saying that the response that I got to the survey mirrors the number of libraries in the U.S. So I had about an equal proportion of urban, suburban, town, and rural libraries as exists in the U.S., although as you will see, rural libraries were underrepresented. So the results I also got a range of responses from all over the country in terms of regions. The most popular program that was reported by respondents to the survey was yoga. So 60% of the libraries that responded to the survey said they had done yoga programs in the past. And the next most common type of program were early literacy initiatives, so programs, as I talked about a bit earlier, that are kind of really focused for very young children, followed by gardening, dancing, story walk, and one thing that I want to point out is that there is some differences between urban and suburban and rural and town libraries. So so it's not an absolute difference, but one thing that I found is that in urban and suburban libraries are more likely to have programs that take place indoors at fixed times. So 70% of the urban and suburban libraries that responded said that they had done a yoga class, whereas less than 50% of rural and town libraries had. But you'll see that rural and town libraries were actually slightly more likely to have story walk initiatives than urban libraries. And so I think one of the things that rural and small town libraries are doing is doing more programs that are outdoors. So if you're in a rural library or a small town library, you may not have a meeting room, you may not have a lot of space, but you can always do things that are outdoors, and so I see that happening. So in an urban setting, there may be more indoor programs, but I think in rural and small town libraries, there's more activities that are taking place outdoors, outside of the library. And again, programs being offered for all ages. This is just to show that the respondents to the survey really show that this is a phenomenon that cuts across all the age divisions. So programs for young children, for adults, for youth. Although it is noticeable that actually the smallest group is tweens and teenagers, so I think there's a lot of potential to do more movement-based programs for teenagers than are currently being offered. And just really quickly, this is a lot of data, but if you look at the bottom here, one of the things that I find absolutely amazing is that 81% of respondents said that participation in their movement-based programs had either met or exceeded their expectations. And so this is really impactful. It's really, getting people excited and engaged in the library. And also noticeable is the fact that 60% of the programs that were reported as being offered brought new users into libraries. So this is not only getting lots of people excited, it's also bringing new people into libraries and creating new library patrons. I'm going to jump right ahead. One thing before I get into the Q&A I wanted to mention is, again, another difference between urban, suburban libraries and rural and small town libraries. So urban libraries, my survey found, are more likely to rely on paid contractors, whereas rural and town libraries, again, that have smaller resources, are way more likely to rely on volunteers. Depending on your setting, there's a lot that can be done without having to spend a lot of money through forming partnerships and recruiting volunteers to lead some of these programs. Okay. But I wanted to point out that there are definitely some challenges to these types of programs. So these are just quickly some of the challenges that were reported by the survey. In some cases, instructors didn't show up or stopped coming. There was a struggle to pay instructors or purchase equipment, struggles to promote programs, people complaining about the noise, people coming to watch the programs but not to participate, poor space for the programs, lawyers worrying about liabilities, people complaining that the library is encroaching into territory where it doesn't belong, the weather is bad. So there's lots of challenges that libraries are dealing with as they kind of embark into this new terrain. But I think it's worth doing despite these challenges because of all the great outcomes that I just talked about, bringing new users into the library, getting excitement in local media, bringing lots of people in. I think I'm just going to skip this. You can look at the slides later if you want, but a lot of libraries are really being creative to kind of do these programs. And one of the things that I found really phenomenal is that actually in about a dozen cases, libraries reported having these programs after the library closed. So again, this is much more common in small town and rural libraries. So the library has physically closed for the day, and in these after-hours programs is a way to get around that if you have minimal space. And one other kind of really unexpected finding is that a lot of libraries, or actually a significant number of libraries, are now actually paying for staff to become certified instructors. So there's I heard from libraries that are paying for their staff to get Tai Chi certification or Zumba certification or yoga certification. So as these types of programs become more and more common and more popular, I think it's going to become more common for library directors to actually pay for continuing education of staff so that they can provide these programs, so that you don't have to rely on, say, paying a yoga instructor or paying a Zumba instructor. You can just have your staff offer that because they know how to do it. And so, yeah, it does require a different type of librarian. So this is from one of the responses to the survey, and they said that it's finding someone who has the right combination of skills, training, and stamina to present them. This library had a staff member who was trained in Tai Chi and loved working with older adults, so they were the perfect person to offer Tai Chi at the library. And one of the youth services librarian is the most energetic person in the world, with a background in education, and the toddler aerobics instructor has trained other staff and wears a tutu during each session. So it's a new type of librarian in some ways that is doing these programs. And just a couple of quick advice points. Do it in partnership. And so some libraries reported that they had challenges. So people from the Parks Department or the Recreation Department or local gyms will complain to the library that they shouldn't be doing this because this is what they already do. And so to kind of avoid those conflicts, it's good to, at the beginning, create relationships with other partners in your community so that it can be a collaborative endeavor as opposed to a competitive one. And it's also good to work with officials from your local or county government to develop hold harmless waivers. So this is just an example from Durham County here in North Carolina, where working with the lawyers from the county, they had put together this quick hold harmless form that they have people sign. And again, it's just about protecting yourself. If someone hurts themselves, you don't want them to hold the library liable. And so developing these forms, I think is important. And there's models out there, so you can get this one from the slides. I know of other I've been collecting other hold harmless forms that libraries are using, but it's definitely something to develop if you don't already have something like this. But just a quick general advice I have is to try something new at your library and empower your staff to do the same. Also try to sustain what you've started or tweak it to make it sustainable. It may not work the first time that you do it. You may have to make some changes to adapt kind of a program that's worked successfully elsewhere to the particularities of your community. And so, for instance, I've heard some libraries that have offered both yoga and Zumba. And in some cases, the yoga took off, in other cases, the Zumba took off. And so depending on your community, one or the other may be more or less popular. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. You need to really kind of tweak it to what your community is interested in doing. And there's lots of information I've put out at the website. I'm just going to stop now and move into question and answer discussion time. Yeah, so what can I do to help you, and what can we all do to help each other? So I'm gonna just stop talking for a minute to catch up on the chat. Definitely put in any questions you have, and we can keep the conversation going for about another 10 or 15 minutes. And apologies for going a little bit longer than I anticipated. Yeah, so Barbara Scott mentioned that another great reason to do this is that it levels the playing field, and I totally agree. And so one of the things that I've heard from a lot of places that there may be other places in your community where you can do yoga or Zumba or Tai Chi or whatever, but most places will charge people money. And so libraries as places that are free to everyone kind of great spaces to kind of engage in this without having to worry about money being a barrier to participation. And there's a question about suggestions for finding instructors. So in terms of finding instructors, one recommendation I have is to basically just be involved with local entities in your community. So if you form those collaborations with your local YMCA or your Parks and Recreation Department, it's often through those collaborations that libraries identify instructors to do yoga, or Tai Chi, or Zumba. Or your public health department. Lots and lots of libraries are getting people into the libraries to lead these programs because of collaborations that have been formed with area entities like Parks and Recreation, Public Health, YMCA. So I think my answer would be try to do it through partnerships to identify instructors if you're thinking about trying to recruit instructors. Okay, just catching up here on the chat. And if you put a question in and I missed it, you can put it in again. The chat comes pretty quickly, so I don't want to miss anyone's question. And there was an interest in the Hold Harmless forms. I can definitely try to collect some of those forms and make them available. So this is an interesting question. Lindsay asks about ideas for making movement programs inclusive to different cultures and language abilities. And actually, Lindsay, I think these types of programs are actually more inclusive than a lot of more traditional library programs. And I've heard, for instance, this was in Virginia. There was a library that had a large Spanish-speaking population, and the staff didn't have a lot of competency in Spanish, but movement is kind of universal. Everyone can move, so even if there's people who don't speak English or there's a large non-English speaking population, these types of programs are great ways to engage diverse populations, people of different languages. I've also seen, in terms of engaging with diverse cultures, I've seen lots of libraries that'll kind of do interactive sessions on dances from around the world, or dances that are unique to different cultures from around the world, and engage with multicultural resource centers or various diverse community groups to bring in demonstrations of diverse dances or diverse folk life. So there's some interest in the story walk, and so I've gathered. If you go to the resources section of the website, and I'll put a link there. I actually have a few links to resources for putting together story walks, as well as resources for putting together other programs if that's something you're interested in. So you'll find on the website a couple resources, Oksana, that may help you learn more about the story walk program that I mentioned, as well as other programs that I mentioned. Yeah, so Lauren asks about grants, and actually it really surprised me when I put together this survey. I expected a lot of these programs to really be dependent on grant funding, But actually, only 5% of the libraries said that they relied on grants to fund these initiatives. In other words, the vast majority of these programs are actually developing without any form of grant funding. So I think programs that receive grant funding tend to get a lot of attention and do things, but I think it's definitely not necessary to have grants to do these types of activities. But if you are looking for grants, let me see. There's a foundation database. Let me see if I can pull that up really quickly. But one place to look for if you are seeking external funding is that there's a number of databases out there to help identify foundations. So a lot of public libraries get money from foundations, and through this foundation center, you can actually identify foundations in your region that may be able to fund programs. And so hopefully that answers the question about funding. And one other thing that I actually neglected to mention, another thing that I've seen a lot of libraries do is to actually do things with technology. So actually, a number of libraries now will have exercise groups that meet at the library and don't really have an instructor. So instead of actually having an instructor lead an exercise class, it'll just be a group of people that meet at the library once a week and will work out together, oftentimes with an exercise DVD that may already be part of the library's collection. So organizing programs around, if you have a collection of exercise DVDs and have a space, just kind of saying, hey, we're going to put this exercise DVD on, and if people want to, they can come and do it together at the library. So that's another thing that I've seen libraries do, which obviously can be done with pretty low cost. Yeah, snowshoes. I don't think too much about snowshoes because I live in North Carolina, but lots and lots of libraries from Michigan, Vermont, Canada, New York talked about having snowshoes that they lend out to patrons in more northerly climates. So again, that's obviously another idea of adapting your programs to the particularities of your local community. Checking out snowshoes wouldn't make sense if you live in Tucson, Arizona, but it makes a lot of sense if you're in northern Vermont. Way to stay connected. I know Jen Carson has created a Facebook page for the Yoga in the Library. And Barbara, I'd love to, if you don't mind sharing, you said that your MMM program has its own Facebook page. I'd love to see that. And I love the idea of a Facebook group. If you all are interested in that, I'd be happy to either by myself or in collaboration with Jen Carson and her initiative, think about a Facebook or some other way to keep the conversation going. Okay, great, Barbara. Thanks so much. Okay, so that's definitely something I will do. I'll figure out a way to create some sort of Facebook either group or page so that we can all continue the conversation and share resources. And I will email about that. Shortly, sometime today or tomorrow, I will also send you all a link that will include the video of this webinar as well as an archive of the chat so that you can go back and watch the video or access the chat again. I want to thank you all for your engagement today. This has been kind of a whirlwind discussion and kind of hopefully just the beginning of a conversation, but not the final word on this topic. And if you all are interested in having follow-up webinars that may be focused on particular topics or particular age groups, reach out to me. I am more than happy to have follow-up webinars that would go into more depth on any of the topics that we covered today. But it is now 2 o'clock, so I don't want to keep anyone longer than advertised. But thank you everyone for the great engagement, and I really appreciate everyone's time. And it's been so inspiring to me to hear about what you all are up to. I just want to close out. On the website, as I mentioned, I've been collecting resources. And I also just have a new article that's more of a research article published about this in Public Library Quarterly that you may want to check out. And if you're unable to access the article, email me, and I'll be more than happy to send you a copy of it if you want to read that. But thanks again for your engagement. You all inspire me, and so love to hear what you all are doing, and I want to make sure that what I'm doing is useful to you. So if you have any comments or feedback, feel free to share them with me. I'm always looking for feedback. But that is it for today, and thanks again. Bye.